Hey, for this week's Sunday Sit Down, I'm going to be talking about games that enable players to go for the story. Let me explain what I mean by this for a second. I was listening to a podcast hosted by Mark Rosewater. I think he's the lead developer for Magic the Gathering, maybe all of Wizards of the Coast, but I think specifically for Magic. And he was talking about how he tries to use certain cards in Magic to let players go for the story, to do something outlandish and unexpected and improbable almost, but and to create a memory from it, to have a story, enabling players to do something specifically for the story, not necessarily even for the win. And he gave a story about playing baseball when he was young, and it reminded me actually of a story. For me as an adult, I played kickball, like an adult league kickball, in the fall. So around this time of year, a couple years ago, I think it was in my late 20s when I did this, maybe early 30s. And I was pretty fast. I was a sprinter in high school. I played soccer. I was a forward. And I couldn't jump as high as Walter back there, but I was a pretty fast sprinter. And so I got it in my head that I wanted to try to take first base on a single and then turn it into a double. Specifically, I had a very specific vision for this. And this will make more sense in a minute, because basically the game enabled me to make this choice. The game of kickball or baseball or softball doesn't say you have to stop at first base. You are allowed to go to second base if you can try, if you can make it there in time. And so anyway, I finally found a circumstance where I could do it. So I kicked a hard single, easily made it to first base. And then the thing that I wanted was, as soon as, naturally, when someone tries to kick a single in kickball or baseball, the player who catches the ball or gets the ball still tries to throw it to first. And so what I wanted to do is take off as soon as the first baseman got the ball. I wanted to take off and try to make second base, because you can't throw a kickball as fast as you can throw like a baseball. So I thought, might actually have a shot here. And so I did. I ran to first. The ball was thrown. The first baseman caught it. And right behind her, it was a co-ed league, I took off. And, it was just an all-out sprint. I didn't know what was happening behind me. But I made it to second, and it was amazing. It felt really, really good. I did something that you probably shouldn't ever try to do. It was not increasing our odds of winning, because there was a good chance of me getting thrown out. But I wanted to do it. I wanted to try to push the limits of myself as a sprinter, and just try to push the limits of the game. And the game let me do that. And so this came to mind when I was listening to Mark Rosewater's podcast, because it was a good reminder to me that I had done actually something similar to his story about trying to make a home run out of a triple. And it just felt good. And it made me think, what are some games where I've been able to do that, or I've seen other players push the limits of the game? And what are some games that just simply enable that to happen, that enable players to do something unexpected that may not necessarily increase their odds of victory, but there's a shot. They have a shot at doing it. And the first one, the big one that came to mind, was shooting the moon in Hearts. It's been a while since I played Hearts, so I played it a ton in college. So I'll probably mess up the rules here. But the basic idea, if you played Hearts, is that you don't want to take Hearts. You don't want them. I hope I say this correctly. Man, it's been a while. But if you take all of the Hearts, you do something called Shoot the Moon, and you get a ton of points from it. You don't automatically win, but you just get a ton of points from it. And it's something that you can always try to do. The game never says you cannot do this. You always have the choice to try to do it. I don't know how the designer of Hearts thought to even put this in the game, but it creates a really interesting tension in the game, because it means, basically, it's also a balancing mechanism, because you are trying not to make one single player take all of the hearts. You're not trying to, you're trying to have someone, maybe if someone does get into the lead, you're trying to have them take a lot of hearts, but not all of them. But I like that the option is there, that you can try to shoot the moon. You can try to get all the hearts. So maybe you even start out a round really poorly, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to go for it. Or maybe you manipulate the round, because I believe there is some card manipulation before you actually start each round. Someone who's played Hearts more recently can talk about it in the comments. But the game fully enables you to do this, and I love that about Hearts. I have a big pile of games where I'm going to talk about this. Another thing that actually made me think of this the other day was Scythe. Scythe has an achievement sheet in it. It's at the bottom of my box. I didn't want to dig it out. But the achievement sheet is basically a way of the game saying, hey, why don't you think about doing something outlandish? And you can do it. We will let you do it. So in the achievement sheet, there's something like, it says, win without deploying any mechs. There's one that says, win without recruiting any, or enlisting any recruits. Win without building any structures. Win without, without upgrading anything. And the basic idea is here, it's pushing players to do something that they wouldn't normally do. They're trying something new because the achievement sheet suggests they do it. And it's purely a soft incentive. There's no reward in the game for not doing one of these things. But I wanted to give players a reason I wanted to enable players to be able to do something outlandish and do something for the story, for that one time they won without mechs or they won without upgrading. I wanted to let players have that choice to do it. And I also wanted to encourage players to try a diversity of strategies. I didn't want players to simply do the same thing every time when they play Scythe. I did actually, this was on my mind because I did a poll the other day in the Scythe Facebook group because I asked people, how many of you actually use the achievement sheet? Because I was very curious, I don't really know. And it was about 70% do not use it, but 30% do, according to this poll. And that's actually pretty significant for a game like Scythe. Like that's a decent number of people who are using the achievement sheet. So I thought that was pretty cool. What else? Okay, Blacas. So Blacas is a game where you are trying to get rid of as many of your pieces, your blocks, your Tetris-like blocks as possible. And the game doesn't tell you what order you can play them in. You can play them in any order. And there's a bonus if you get rid of all of your pieces and if the very last piece you play is the single tile. There's one tile that's just a single square. I love that the game has this in the rules, that it says this is a thing you can do, and we're going to kind of encourage you to do it. It is really hard to do that because there are certain points in the game where you will probably need to use that one piece to get through a crack and make it to a better area for your pieces. But as someone who has done it a few times, it is incredibly satisfying to try to do it. And I think what's key here is that there are times in the game where you probably should use that piece. And so it's one of these things in the game where you are not necessarily increasing your chances of victory by ignoring that one piece. But it can feel so good to save it to the end and actually end the game with that one piece and get rid of all your pieces that I try it every time. Like that's actually the thing that I always try to do because it is so satisfying to do. A lot of these other examples are things that I do rarely. I don't do them all that often. Fantasy Realms, I think one of the reasons I really love this game, so this is a hand-building game. I've talked about it in terms of combos, because there's so many interesting combos you can build in this game. But the whole game is kind of built around this concept of accomplishing a story. There are a number of cards in this deck that say something very difficult. Like they say, like, get a straight of cards, which is very difficult in this game. There's a few others that say, like, if you collected this, and this, you get 100 points. You get 150 points. Oh, well, maybe 100 is the max. But 100 is a lot of points in this game. I love that the game is built around this concept. It is basically daring players to do something outlandish and difficult, and it is letting them know exactly how to do it. There's no obstructing how you do it. It's saying, this is how you do it. Good luck. Try to do it. Try to pull this off. And it's incredibly satisfying when you do it. I'm trying to think if I've ever done anything truly outlandish like that. There's a 100-point card in here where you get like the Book of Changes and a few other things. I've done that one once. But getting 100 points off a single card is incredibly satisfying in any game, but especially in Fantasy Realms. Let's see, Welcome To. Okay, I've tried this actually a couple times in Welcome To. Welcome To is a roll and write style game where there's all these different categories of scoring. And the game pretty much says, hey, do what you want. Score what you want based on the cards that come up. It's your choice. You go after what you want. And most of them have an escalating number of points. So if you specialize in a category, you're going to get more points from it. There's one category, though, that lets you write down extra numbers. It's the BIS category. It's here, all right, there. And so if you choose BIS, you get to write down the number of the card that you draw, and then you get to copy a number that you've already written down on your mat. But when you do, you have to cross off one of these BIS icons, and you write BIS on the building. And it can lead to a lot of negative points. Like the highest level is you lose 28 points if you've done BIS 9 times. You lose 28 points. And so I tried a strategy where I just went full BIS, basically. I every time I could, I chose BIS, and I was essentially trying to accelerate the end of the game. I wanted to really catch the other players off guard and end the game as soon as possible, in the hopes that the points that I'd gained from writing down all those extra numbers would offset the points I was going to lose. I think I ended up losing about 24 points, and I lost miserably. I had like 17 points. I did not do well at all. It was not worth doing, but it was a lot of fun to do. I remember it. I mean, I played this game a dozen times, and I somehow remember that one time where I went full BIS. And basically every category in the game lets you do that. Now, the one thing I should mention here is that I think games that allow this type of story moment when players do something outlandish or extreme, where they ignore something completely and they focus really on something else, I think it's important for them to not do things that ruin the experience for other players. And not that Welcome to does that, but if I had pulled it off, other players would have been a bit surprised. Now, it was a visible thing. Players could see that I was doing it, and that's why I think it works. They could see that I was going full BIS and that the game might end early. And so they were actually like actively rooting against other BIS cards to show up in case it paid off. Although I think they had their doubts that it was going to pay off. But I think that's really important, that it is a visible thing that you're doing, that other players can see it, that they have a little bit of, maybe not necessarily control over it, but they can see that it's happening, that you're not totally catching them off guard with whatever your outlandish thing is. Celestia and other push your luck games, I think there's another one in the pile here that I'll pull out. But Celestia is a game where you are competing, but you're cooperating to get as far as possible on this line of floating islands, and the further you go, the more points you get. And so every game of Celestia is kind of this, creates this outlandish story moment, if you want to, where you can really push to get to that last island. Your odds aren't good at doing it. Your odds get increasingly poorer as you go down this stream of islands, because you're rolling more and more dice. You have to meet more benefits. You rely on other players to accomplish those benefits, or to pay the costs, essentially, not benefits. But it feels really good to get to that last island. So even though it's not necessarily a winning strategy, if you get there, it is a winning strategy, but the odds are heavily against it, but it feels really good to get there. I think other push your luck games do this as well. In Tzolk'in, this is kind of a random example, but in Tzolk'in, I played this game a ton, and I like trying different strategies. And there was one recently where I decided I want to get 2 monuments. Monuments are the end game buildings. They're very difficult to get. Usually, at best, you'll get one of them. Maybe some of you in the comments are better at this than I am. Although this is one of the games I'm actually pretty good at. And I was like, I just want to go for 2 monuments. I want to see if I can do it. I want to see if I can do it. And actually, in this particular game, I wanted to get 1 in the first round. So I got 1 monument in the first round. I wanted to see if I could do that. And then I got 1 later as well. And it was incredibly satisfying. Like, just to be able to get 2 of these things that you rarely ever see a player get 2 of. I ended up winning, but winning wasn't even important. I think that's one of the cool things about this topic, that sometimes you can just push something to see if you can do it, to see if, for your own sense of gratitude, to see if you can do it. And it doesn't matter as much if you win or lose. Clank is the other push your luck game that I think is built around this concept. There are 2 kind of extreme strategies in Clank. One is to run into a very shallow portion of the dungeon, grab an artifact and run back out. The other is to go very deep into the dungeon, get the most difficult, the 30-point treasure, and then get out with it alive and win. I like that Clank says, hey, here are 2 things you can do. Among many other, there's a range in the middle that you can do, but the game allows you to do this, and it allows you to try at least, to see if you can pull it off. And actually, in comparison, I played Clank in space once, and it's one of these weird situations, and I think this is something to keep in mind with this topic, that it essentially fixes a problem that wasn't there, in my opinion. And it makes it less fun. I think Clank is way more fun than Clank in Space, because Clank in Space it does not let you just run in and run out and get something. I think it does allow you to go into the depths and get something, but it creates all these like little barriers in the way of you doing this extreme thing of just running in and running out. And I think the intent was good. The intent was that they were trying to make sure you don't ruin the experience for the other players by running in, getting the most shallow treasure, and running out. I get that. But I think sometimes when you add more constraints in a game, you make it a lot less fun. The opposite can be true. Constraints can make you feel clever and can be fun. But in Clank, I like that Clank allows you to do the outlandish thing. And I think Clank in Space suffers from the fact that it doesn't allow you to do that. I have 2 more examples here, maybe some other ones written down. No more written down. Yeah, just 2 here. Yedo, I've talked about this before. Yedo has so there are 4 different types of mission cards that you can get in Yedo. They range from very easy to very difficult. And Yedo, I've said in the past, if you want to study how to do missions in a game, study Yedo. It's incredible. Does missions better than any other game, in my opinion. One of the black missions has you killing the Emperor. You're doing bad things with these missions. The game doesn't glorify it, but it's what you're doing in the game. If you kill the Emperor, that triggers the round of the game, the final round. Normally you play to 11 rounds, and that triggers the end of the game. Yedo has this one card that it allows you to end the game early, most likely win because you're going to get a lot of points from it, and it is exceedingly difficult to do. And it's even difficult just to find this card because you're blind drawing out of the black card deck to get this card. I think I've tried it once, and I think I actually accomplished it. I ended the game during the round that it was going to end anyway, and so it wasn't a huge memorable moment, but I think I did pull it off. It's been a while, so my memory's a little shaky on it. But I like that the game puts this crazy card in the game. They didn't have to put that in the game. It creates a weird exception to a rule even, which is normally something I don't like. But I love that the card is in the game. You're always wondering, hey, is it there? Could it happen? Can I do it? Can I try to pull off the most difficult thing in the game? So I love that it's there. I love that this super difficult thing is here. It really, as I'm talking right now, I'm like, I want to put this in my Civ game. I want to put something exceedingly difficult, but if you pull it off, it feels really, really good. I'm going to write it down right now. I'm writing down Yedo on my Civ game notes. It's going to happen. And last, Rajas of the Ganges, one of my favorite games of this year. So the kind of the hook in Ganges is that you are trying. You have 2 different tracks that go around the board. One is a fame track, the other is a money track, and the game end is triggered when your 2 tracks meet. And so a normal way to play Ganges is to kind of do both at the right times. Like get fame when you can maximize fame, get money when you can maximize money, and they'll meet somewhere in the middle. But Ganges doesn't say that you have to do that. Ganges says whenever you cross streams, the game ends. And so you are completely allowed just to focus on money if you want. And I've seen players do this. I did this the first time I played. I ignored fame completely. I just focused on money. I went almost all the way around the track and met up with my original fame token. And you can do the opposite too. I've seen players focus solely on fame. I haven't seen them quite get as far with fame. It's a little more difficult to do because you need money. You have to spend money more often in the game. But I love that the game lets you do this. This is the really crazy fun thing about Ganges, right? Rajas of the Ganges, that you have the possibility of just completely ignoring one of the types of victory points and just focusing on the other one. And I've just seen that glimmer in players' eyes when they realize this and when they try it. Even if they don't win, you can see that they're doing something different. They're excited to be doing something different, to be pushing a boundary. And this is what I love about this whole idea of going for the story in a game. Win or lose, I love games that enable those moments, those strategies, those crazy strategies that rarely work, but when they do, it feels incredible. I'm blanking on one right now. Another one is coming to mind where you get it feels like pushing the moon. I can't remember what it is offhand. I'm sure you'll have some great examples in the comments of times where you've done this. Tell me your story. The time that you've pushed a boundary in a game and done something outlandish, whether you won or lost. And let me know what was it in the game that enabled you to do that. And if you're glad that the game enabled you to do that. That's my Sunday sit down this week. Thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you on Tuesday to discuss probably prehistory. I played prehistory yesterday. We'll see. But yeah, have a good Sunday. Take care.